It is, I think, by any measure, the biggest scandal in the history of the NHS. It is also the latest, if you like, in a series of scandals of secrecy as well as malfeasance. Be clear about one thing, though. This is about finding the truth for campaigners and victims, or getting a lot closer to the truth. Justice remains very, very far away, although with today's publication it will inexorably move a little bit closer. But this is not about justice, this is about the truth. Charlotte Lynch has had early access to this report, although it's a hefty document, so there's no earthly way she would have been able to read all of it. She joins me now from outside Central Hall in Westminster. Charlotte, what can you tell us?
James, it's seismic, to say the least. It found a subtle, pervasive and chilling cover-up of the infected blood scandal by the NHS and successive governments who sought to hide the truth of this treatment disaster. 30,000 people in the UK were infected with HIV and hepatitis B and C after they were given blood and blood products contaminated with it between the 1970s and the early 1990s. But the final report of this inquiry found that there was a deliberate suppression of the truth and a deliberate destruction of relevant documents that would expose that. In fact, patients were knowingly exposed to the risks of infections that was known about before most of them were treated, in the case of hepatitis, since the end of World War II. And many Department of Health files containing material dealing with delays in the introduction of screening of these blood donations were destroyed. They related to the decision-making of the advisory committee and the virological safety of blood. Those were marked for destruction in 1993, which the chairman of the inquiry, Sir Brian Langstaff, said was not an accident. It also found a litany of failures from government. They had full knowledge from early 1975 that blood was being collected from prisons in almost all transfusion centres in the UK, but there was no action taken to stop or even to discourage it. And it said to save face and to save money, successive governments refused to admit responsibility and showed little interest in finding the truth and taking action. They should have taken action, it said, in 1983, and that's being generous, when at the beginning of the year, evidence emerged of haemophiliacs in the US being infected with HIV. The Department of Health were also warned mid-1983 that they should temporarily withdraw US blood products, but that was not brought to the attention of ministers, and it wasn't brought to the attention of the chief medical officer. Now, throughout the whole of 1983, a line was used by Ken Clarke as health minister that there was no conclusive proof that AIDS could be transmitted through blood or blood products. This report says that that was misleading. Now, I've just been speaking to one of the survivors, Derek Martindale from southwest London. He was born a haemophiliac and he was infected through a transmission that he received after that in 1985.
I was infected in 1984-85. 18 months, 24 months before then, the warnings were going out about the risk. It was a false economy not to do anything, in the sense of the money it's cost, but also, so many people died, so many people have suffered and are still suffering, still dying. And it wasn't an accident, it was intentional. The government and the departments involved are totally culpable on this.
And one of those people that died was Derek's younger brother. He died as a result of contracting AIDS. And when I asked Derek what justice would look like for him today, he said proper compensation. Now, the chair, Sir Brian Langstaff, has made clear in this report that he believes the chief responsibility lies with successive governments. And he says they should set a compensation scheme up now, even saying it was wrong for them to insist, as we've been hearing over the course of the last few days and years, that they should wait for the final publication of this report to provide a proper response and to come up with a proper compensation scheme. That was wrong, he said. They did not need to wait. Now, it also made clear, James, and this for me was the most disturbing part. We've heard so much about school children at Treloar College who were infected at a haemophiliac centre. This report found evidence that research was conducted on those children. They were treated with multiple riskier commercial concentrates in a preventative manner. So some of them didn't even need the transfusions. It was completely unnecessary. And they were used as objects for research. And that happened in other places as well. Research conducted on haemophiliacs, including children, when they didn't know about it or didn't consent to it. These factor 8 blood products, they were called, that were imported from America, were being given to people in an experimental way without them knowing. That, no doubt, is going to be another, major factor that comes out from this that will need further examination at incredibly high levels, because for me to read that, it was one of the most disturbing things. But Sir Brian Langstaff making that key recommendation that a compensation scheme should be set up now. And just an important background point to note as well, this inquiry has not made a finding that criminal prosecutions should be sought, but that is because it can't. Legally, under the Inquiries Act, it cannot call for that. So that recommendation is not in here, but that is because legally it cannot make that finding.